You can support me by turning on notifications, subscribing to my channel, and liking the video. Waiting for your comments. The cursed route of the Silent Carriage. The eerie train ride. Even ghosts cannot escape. Under the shroud of a cold autumn evening, when the wind whispered secrets and twilight bled into gloom, an ancient train station lay in silent despair. Its rusted iron rails, long forgotten by the modern world, carried the heavy burden of lost souls and untold mysteries. For generations, this forsaken station had served as a bridge between the living and the dead, a place where legends and lamentations intertwined. It was here that the infamous cursed route of the Silent Carriage was born, a spectral journey so feared that even the ghosts seemed to shudder at its mention. Jonathan Blackwood, a seeker of the macabre and a relentless pursuer of forbidden lore, had long been drawn to these whispered tales. Night after night, over flickering candlelight and in hushed tones among locals, he had pieced together fragments of a story that defied reason. Rumors told of a train that emerged only under the ghostly glow of a full moon, a locomotive shrouded in mystery and cloaked in tragedy. Its sole carriage, the Silent Carriage, was said to harbor an atmosphere of despair so profound that no mortal words could break its oppressive hush. It was on this very night that Jonathan, armed with a battered notebook filled with cryptic scribbles and yellowed clippings, set off toward the station. As Jonathan approached the station, a thick fog swallowed the landscape, transforming the world into a monochrome tapestry of shadows and spectral shapes. The platform was eerily deserted. Only the sound of his measured footsteps echoed like distant funeral bells. The cold air, heavy with the scent of damp earth and decay, pressed in around him as if warning him away. Yet, despite the palpable dread, his resolve remained unbroken. Every instinct urged him forward, deeper into the heart of the mystery. At the stroke of midnight, as if summoned by the collective yearning of the long-forgotten dead, a spectral locomotive materialized on the horizon. Its form was at once both archaic and otherworldly, a ghostly silhouette gliding silently along the rails. There was no roar of an engine, no burst of steam, only the soft, sorrowful cadence of the wheels meeting the track, as though each rotation mourned a lost past. In the center of this haunting procession, the Silent Carriage awaited with its doors wide open, beckoning the curious and the doomed alike. Jonathan paused at the threshold, his heart pounding like a frantic drum. In his mind, the voices of the town's elders echoed warnings: never board that train, for its curse is eternal. But curiosity, that perilous spark of the human soul, overpowered caution. With trembling hands and a determined step, he crossed the threshold into the carriage. Inside, the world had changed. The dim light revealed rows of ancient seats, each one arranged with an almost ritualistic precision. The silence was absolute, a suffocating hush that seemed to absorb all sound except the soft, rhythmic clatter of the train's progress. The carriage's interior exuded an air of forlorn majesty. Faded portraits lined the walls, their subjects' eyes staring vacantly, as if forever trapped in memories of a bygone era. In one corner, an inscription in elegant, archaic script read, "Abandon hope, ye who enter," a grim reminder of the fate awaiting any who dare disturb the balance of this spectral realm. Jonathan's fingers brushed lightly over the inscription, and in that moment, the weight of centuries seemed to press upon his very soul. As the train began to move, the external world morphed into a shifting panorama of the surreal. Beyond the fogged windows, landscapes flickered like half-remembered dreams, a melancholy countryside illuminated by the silvery glow of a reluctant moon. Faint figures drifted at the edges of his vision, translucent shapes that moved with an ethereal grace. their forms dissolving into the mist before he could fully comprehend their sorrowful countenances. It was as though the train had become a vessel for lost souls, a repository for memories of lives ended too soon. In the quiet intervals between the steady clack of the wheels and the soft, almost imperceptible hum of the engine, Jonathan found himself piecing together the tragic lore of the Silent Carriage. Whispers, like fragments of a half-remembered lullaby, drifted from the corners of the carriage. They spoke of a time when the train was not a harbinger of doom, but a symbol of hope, a link connecting distant towns and bridging disparate worlds. That golden era, however, had been irrevocably shattered by a catastrophic accident. In a moment of inexplicable calamity, a once celebrated train was transformed into a cursed relic, condemned to traverse the boundaries between life and death, forever bearing the scars of its tragic past. The phantom passengers aboard the carriage moved with a deliberate, almost ritualistic slowness. Their expressions were etched with sorrow and resignation, as if each carried the weight of innumerable regrets. Some drifted silently past, their eyes empty yet pleading. Others lingered in darkened corners, their presence more felt than seen. Among these spectral figures, legends spoke of a mysterious conductor, a figure clad entirely in shadow, whose duty was to steer the train along its doomed course. Whether myth or truth, the presence of this enigmatic entity added yet another layer of dread to the already oppressive atmosphere. Jonathan's mind raced with conflicting emotions. Every detail of the journey was a paradox, beauty intertwined with despair, wonder shadowed by foreboding. The train, gliding through a landscape where reality seemed to blur with nightmare, appeared to be a bridge between two realms, a liminal space where time itself was twisted. The mundane worries of the waking world receded into insignificance, replaced by the overwhelming force of destiny and the haunting allure of secrets best left undiscovered. In that surreal silence, Jonathan's every sense was heightened. The subtle creak of ancient wood, the almost inaudible whisper of the wind through shattered windows, even the faint smell of old leather and despair, all coalesced into a symphony of the macabre. With each passing moment, he felt as if he were being stripped of his earthly self, becoming an unwitting participant in a grand, inexorable ritual. The train was not merely a mode of transport, but a living narrative of tragedy, its every detail a testament to the inexorable pull of fate. As the carriage ventured further into the night, the environment beyond the windows grew increasingly surreal. The distant outlines of abandoned towns, the skeletal remains of once thriving villages, and the barren expanses that whispered of forgotten memories all passed by like fleeting visions. The spectral figures that emerged from the gloom, the remnants of lives cut short, seemed to serve as mournful guides along this forsaken journey. They were both a warning and an invitation, a call to embrace the mysteries that lay ahead, no matter how harrowing. In a rare moment of clarity amidst the spectral chaos, Jonathan's eyes fell upon a delicate handwritten note left on one of the seats. The faded ink, trembling with urgency, told a tale of loss and inevitability. It recounted the story of a young woman who had once boarded the train in search of a lost love, only to vanish into the mists of time. Her fate, like so many others, remained an unsolvable enigma, a silent testimony to the curse that bound the carriage and its ill-fated passengers. As he read the words, a chill ran down his spine. Here was evidence that the legends were not mere myth, but a dire reality woven into the fabric of the train's history. In that moment, suspended between hope and despair, Jonathan realized that his journey was far more than a quest for forbidden knowledge. It was a plunge into the depths of human emotion, a confrontation with the eternal dance of light and darkness that resides within every soul. The Silent Carriage, with its ghostly denizens and shrouded mysteries, was a mirror reflecting the innermost fears and desires of those who dared to board it. With the train now gliding steadily onward, the ominous quiet was intermittently broken by the soft toll of a distant bell, a sound that resonated with the finality of a death knell. Jonathan's heart pounded as he sensed that the journey was about to delve into darker, more inexplicable realms. Shadows began to lengthen, and whispers in a language older than time itself echoed faintly around him. The world outside, once a vaguely comforting notion of reality, had dissolved into an endless night where every flicker of light was swallowed by encroaching darkness. In those moments, the true nature of the curse became almost tangible. Jonathan understood that the Silent Carriage was not merely a relic of a tragic past, but an active force, one that ensnared its passengers, binding them to an eternal journey through realms where hope was a fleeting illusion. Every heartbeat, every labored breath in that suffocating silence reaffirmed the grim truth. The train, and all who rode it, were prisoners of a fate from which there was no escape. And so, as the carriage hurtled deeper into the night's embrace, Jonathan Blackwood clutched his notebook as though it were a lifeline. Each frantic scribble, every trembling word captured on its pages, was a desperate attempt to immortalize the horrors and wonders of this cursed voyage. Unbeknownst to him, his account would soon join the countless other lamentations etched into the annals of the Silent Carriage, a chronicle of souls forever bound to a destiny of sorrow, mystery, and inexorable despair. In the eerie calm that followed, the world outside grew dimmer still, a monochrome vista of forgotten dreams and spectral echoes. Jonathan, standing amidst the silent procession of lost lives, felt both the crushing weight of despair and a strange magnetic pull towards the unknown. It was here, in the liminal space between life and death, that his true journey had just begun. As the train's ancient wheels clicked steadily over time-worn rails, a final thought echoed in his mind, a silent prayer to a world that no longer existed. With eyes fixed on the swirling mists outside, he silently vowed to uncover the truth behind the curse, even if that truth was destined to shatter all remnants of hope. For in this carriage of sorrow and spectral beauty, every moment was a step deeper into a labyrinth of eternal night, where the line between myth and reality blurred into a single unending terror. As the train plunged deeper into the obsidian corridors of the night, Jonathan Blackwood found himself suspended in a realm where the boundary between memory and nightmare blurred. The carriage, now bathed in an ethereal glow from a solitary, flickering lamp affixed to the ceiling, revealed details that defied both time and rationality. Shadows lengthened into grotesque silhouettes, and the faded portraits along the walls seemed to whisper secrets from a world long past. It was during one of these spectral moments that Jonathan first caught sight of the figure everyone had murmured about in hushed legends, the enigmatic conductor. Draped entirely in an immaculate black uniform that absorbed rather than reflected the scant light, the conductor moved with an eerie, almost deliberate grace. His face was hidden beneath a wide-brimmed hat, and only the cold gleam of his eyes could be discerned, flickering like distant stars in a night sky devoid of mercy. The conductor's presence was more than a mere apparition. It was as if he were the living embodiment of the train's tragic soul. He navigated the narrow aisle with the poise of someone who had traversed the boundaries of existence for eons. Every step he took echoed softly, synchronizing with the rhythmic clatter of the wheels on ancient tracks. In his wake, a subtle chill trailed like a whisper, a reminder that those who boarded this ill-fated journey were bound by a fate that had long been inscribed in the annals of despair. Jonathan's heart pounded with an amalgam of dread and an irresistible pull to uncover the mysteries of the conductor's domain. As he moved cautiously toward the figure, A heavy silence enveloped him, a silence so profound it seemed to muffle even his own thoughts. The conductor halted abruptly at the far end of the carriage, as if waiting for Jonathan's approach. In that charged moment, time itself appeared to shudder, its passage marked by the slow, inexorable ticking of an ancient clock no one could see. "Welcome, seeker," came a voice that resonated not from the lips of a man, but from the very fabric of the carriage. The words were both a greeting and a warning, imbued with an echo of sorrow that tugged at the edges of Jonathan's soul. Though the voice was not clearly uttered by the conductor, it filled the space between them, as if the train itself were speaking through its appointed master. Compelled by a force beyond comprehension, Jonathan advanced, each step an act of defiance against the innate instinct to flee. The conductor's eyes, cold and fathomless, remained fixed on him, as if measuring the worthiness of his intrusion into this realm of eternal twilight. A subtle nod from the figure seemed to sanction Jonathan's presence, inviting him to partake in a journey through the deepest corridors of lost time. Without a word, the conductor turned and beckoned Jonathan to follow. The passage beyond the main compartment opened into a narrow corridor lined with a mosaic of cracked tiles and fading inscriptions. Here, the atmosphere grew denser. The air itself was heavy with the weight of countless untold stories. As they walked side by side, Jonathan felt as though he were treading upon the memories of souls whose lives had been extinguished too soon. Each footstep reverberated with echoes of laughter, sorrow, and regrets, a somber symphony of lives once lived. In the murky luminescence of the corridor, the conductor gestured toward a door at its end, ornate and out of place amid the stark decay. The door, carved with intricate symbols and modeled by time, seemed to be a threshold not merely to another compartment of the train, but to an entirely different dimension, a sanctuary of secrets. Within, the silent message conveyed by the conductor's unwavering gaze lies the chronicle of this cursed journey. Here, every truth, every sorrow, and every forsaken dream is etched in the very walls. Jonathan, his heart a turbulent sea of anticipation and trepidation, hesitated before pushing the door open. As it creaked inward, the passage beyond revealed a vast chamber, a hidden archive of the train's lamentable history. Dust motes swirled in the feeble light of antique chandeliers, and countless relics were arranged with methodical precision on time-worn shelves. Old ledgers, faded letters, and photographs of sorrowful faces narrated a story of woe that spanned generations. He approached one of the ancient ledgers, its leather cover cracked and brittle with age. The pages, yellowed by the relentless march of time, recounted the names of those who had embarked on the ill-fated voyage. Each entry was inscribed with delicate, almost desperate handwriting, chronicling lives interrupted by a twist of fate. As Jonathan leafed through the brittle pages, he recognized familiar themes: love lost, promises broken, and dreams suffocated under the weight of an inescapable curse. Across the room, under a solitary beam of light, lay a collection of photographs. Faces captured in moments of both hope and despair stared back at him. Their eyes, frozen in time, seemed to plead for release from an eternal bondage. One particular photograph, a portrait of a woman with sorrowful eyes and an enigmatic smile, drew Jonathan's gaze. The image resonated with a personal grief he could scarcely articulate, as though the woman was a mirror of his own concealed sorrows. A sudden chill brushed his skin, and for an instant, the chamber seemed to breathe, the very walls pulsating with the memories of those who had come before. The conductor's presence, though silent, loomed over the archive like a sentinel guarding sacred truths. His eyes never wavered from Jonathan, as if ensuring that every revelation was measured against the price of knowledge. Not all who seek the truth are prepared for its burden, the echoing voice intoned, a caution wrapped in layers of melancholy wisdom. It was a reminder that the train's curse was not merely a relic of a bygone era, but an active, unyielding force, a specter that would forever haunt the corridors of time for those who dared to confront it. Jonathan's mind swirled with questions. Who were these souls that now resided in the shadows of memory? What secrets did the ledger conceal about the events that had turned a celebrated journey into a perpetual nightmare? And most haunting of all, was it possible to alter the inexorable course of destiny once it had been set in motion? The weight of these questions pressed upon him, each one a fragment of the larger, terrifying tapestry of the train's legacy. In that repository of forgotten lives, Jonathan discovered a collection of personal diaries, a mosaic of human experience that spanned decades. The entries ranged from exuberant declarations of love and hope to desperate pleas for salvation in the face of overwhelming despair. One diary, penned in a delicate, almost trembling script, detailed the journey of a young man who had boarded the train in search of redemption. His final entry was a haunting farewell, a prayer whispered into the void, beseeching the unseen forces to grant him solace. The raw emotion contained within these pages was palpable, and as Jonathan read, he could almost hear the quiet, anguished voices of those long past, each resonating with a truth too potent to be forgotten. Outside the hidden archive, the sound of the train's steady progression continued, a constant reminder that the journey was far from over. The conductor reappeared, his form a silent enigma, and gestured for Jonathan to return to the main carriage. The brief sojourn in the Chamber of Memories had been both a revelation and a burden. Here, amidst the relics of despair, the true horror of the cursed route was laid bare. Every lost soul, every fragmented memory, was woven into the very fabric of the train, a perpetual testament to the inevitability of fate. As they retraced their steps back into the dim corridor, Jonathan's mind was ablaze with revelations. The conductor's silent guidance had imparted a dual message, a call to bear witness to the inescapable sorrow of the past, and a forewarning that the road ahead would demand an even greater toll. The train's relentless march was not simply a physical journey through haunted landscapes, it was a metaphysical passage into the darkest recesses of the human heart. The atmosphere in the main carriage had shifted imperceptibly, yet undeniably. The spectral passengers, whose mournful expressions had already conveyed the weight of their regrets, now seemed to carry an even deeper despair, a silent acknowledgement that the revelations of the archive had awakened dormant memories, perhaps even offering them a final chance at closure. The interplay of light and shadow grew more pronounced, as if the very essence of the carriage was engaged in a timeless dance between hope and desolation. In a moment of quiet introspection, Jonathan surveyed his surroundings. The subdued glow of the carriage illuminated rows of seats now occupied by figures who seemed less like lost souls and more like living echoes of forgotten lives. Their eyes, once vacant, now flickered with a spark, a fragile ember of remembrance and longing. It was as if the act of confronting their collective past had stirred something deep within them, a fleeting hope that even the most cursed of destinies might be rewritten. Yet, the silent warning remained ever present, carried on the cold breath of the wind and in the measured steps of the conductor. For every glimpse of hope, the specter of doom loomed, a reminder that some journeys were fated to end in despair. As the train continued its inexorable progress, the landscape outside transformed into a surreal canvas of shifting hues and distorted shapes. The boundaries of reality dissolved into a dreamscape of sorrow and beauty, where every passing moment was a testament to the eternal interplay of light and darkness. Jonathan's resolve, though tested by the weight of unbearable truths, remained unyielding. He understood that to truly grasp the nature of the curse, he would have to journey further into the labyrinth of memories and confront the forces that had doomed this spectral voyage. The conductor, now standing at the threshold between the carriage and the unknown, offered him a final silent nod, a benediction, and a challenge all at once. With a deep, steadying breath, Jonathan stepped away from the comforting familiarity of the archive and rejoined the spectral procession. The carriage, its interior alive with the quiet stirrings of the past, beckoned him onward. Each moment, every subtle creak of the aged wood and every whisper of the wind against the windows carried with it the promise of revelations yet to be uncovered, a promise that his quest for truth would soon lead him into realms where the light of reason was extinguished by the overwhelming shadows of fate. And so, with the silent conductor as his enigmatic guide and the haunted memories of those long lost etched into his every thought, Jonathan Blackwood prepared himself for the next phase of this fated journey, a descent into the heart of the mystery, where the cursed route of the Silent Carriage would reveal its most harrowing secrets, and where every revelation came with a price far greater than mortal souls could ever bear. Jonathan Blackwood's heart still pounded from the revelations of the hidden archive as he stepped back into the main carriage. The train, now a spectral vessel of memories and haunting secrets, carried him further into realms where time, fate, and the ethereal intermingled. The silence that once offered only a muted backdrop now roared with unspoken truths, echoing the despair of souls long consigned to the eternal night. The atmosphere in the carriage shifted dramatically. What had begun as a solitary investigation of ancient regrets now unfolded into a nightmarish descent into the abyss of the human spirit. Jonathan's eyes, adjusting to the dim interplay of flickering lamplight and encroaching shadow, discerned new details within the spectral throng of passengers. Their forms, once merely sorrowful echoes, now seemed to animate with tormented life, faces contorted in silent agony, eyes brimming with the pain of unresolved destinies. A low, persistent murmur began to swell among them, a sound that was neither a lament nor a prayer, but a chorus of lost voices. It was as if the very air vibrated with the sorrow of countless souls, each note a fragment of despair woven into a requiem for forgotten lives. In that haunting symphony, Jonathan could almost detect the echo of his own buried regrets, a reminder that the line between the seeker and the lost was perilously thin. Drawn inexplicably toward the rear of the carriage, Jonathan noticed a secluded compartment shrouded in darkness. The door, slightly ajar, beckoned him with a magnetic pull that defied rational explanation. With trepidation, he approached and gently pushed it open, revealing a space that seemed to exist outside the normal confines of the train. The air within was chill and stagnant, as though it had been sealed off for decades. Here, in the near-total gloom, faint traces of candlelight danced along the walls, illuminating murals of ancient scenes, depictions of joyous gatherings, battles for honor, and moments of bittersweet farewell. Yet beneath these images lay a pervasive melancholy, a reminder that every triumph was destined to be eclipsed by inevitable sorrow. Inside the compartment, Jonathan discovered a series of objects meticulously arranged on a weathered wooden table. At its center lay an ornate mirror, its silvered surface tarnished by time, but still capable of reflecting a distorted image of the room. Beside it rested a cluster of personal artifacts, a faded photograph of a smiling family, a small rusted locket, and a bundle of letters bound by a fraying ribbon. The items exuded an aura of intimacy and loss, each one a silent testament to lives that had once teemed with hope. As Jonathan's gaze shifted to the mirror, a sudden chill coursed through him. In its reflection, he saw not only his own face, etched with determination and apprehension, but also fleeting images of other souls, phantom visages that drifted in and out of focus. For a moment, it seemed as if the mirror was not a mere object, but a portal to the depths of memory and regret. In that brief interval, the faces of those captured in the artifacts seemed to speak directly to him, their eyes silently imploring him to acknowledge the price of their forgotten dreams. Outside the compartment, the murmurs in the carriage deepened into a subtle, rhythmic cadence, a heartbeat echoing from the depths of despair. Jonathan stepped back into the corridor, his mind awash with questions about the nature of the curse that bound this train and its passengers. What force had transmuted a vessel of hope into a moving mausoleum of sorrow? And what role did he, a mortal intruder, play in this interminable cycle of loss and lament? It was then that the conductor reappeared at the end of the aisle, his form a steadfast sentinel amidst the swirling gloom. The figure's eyes, ever piercing and unreadable, seemed to assess Jonathan's inner turmoil. With a slight inclination of his head, the conductor gestured toward a narrow passage leading to what appeared to be the engine's compartment, a place Jonathan had yet to explore. Though his instincts screamed caution, an overwhelming compulsion urged him to follow, as if the very essence of the train demanded that he confront the origin of its cursed journey. The passage was cramped and oppressive, the walls lined with a patchwork of metal and faded wallpaper that told tales of a bygone era. Every step forward felt like a descent into a well of despair. The sound of the train's wheels, now more insistent than ever, reverberated in the confined space, merging with the low hum of voices that seemed to emanate from the very structure of the carriage. It was a sound that defied easy description, a blend of sorrow, anger, and resignation, as though the machine itself were mourning a forgotten past. As Jonathan pressed onward, he encountered a series of relics embedded within the corridor's walls. One panel, carved with enigmatic symbols and interwoven with cryptic verses, caught his eye. The script, swirling and looping in an intricate dance, appeared to be both a warning and a confession. It spoke of a time when the train had been a beacon of unity, a living bridge that connected disparate communities and hearts. But that light had been dimmed by a catastrophic event, a calamity that had shattered the fabric of destiny and condemned the train to a perpetual journey through the void. In a secluded alcove, the passage opened into a small chamber dominated by a colossal gear mechanism, a remnant of the train's original engine. The machinery, though silent and inert now, seemed imbued with a spectral energy that resonated with the very pulse of the cursed route. Jonathan traced his fingers along the cold metal, feeling an inexplicable connection to the sorrow and determination of those who had labored to create this mechanical marvel. It was as if the gears and levers were the physical embodiment of a collective will, one that had long ago surrendered to fate's relentless decree. Within the chamber, a narrow window offered a view of the outside world, a landscape transformed by the train's relentless passage. The scene beyond was a study in desolation. Ruined edifices silhouetted against a starless sky, barren fields that stretched into infinity, and distant mountains shrouded in mist. The view was both haunting and mesmerizing, a stark reminder that the cursed journey was not confined to the train alone, but extended into the very fabric of the surrounding lands. Every crumbling stone and every withered branch told a story of loss and unfulfilled destiny. As the engine's compartment loomed ahead, the conductor's silent presence continued to guide Jonathan. With measured steps, they entered a vast, dimly lit hall where the inner workings of the train were revealed in all their archaic complexity. Here, amid a labyrinth of pipes, gauges, and ancient control panels, the heart of the spectral locomotive pulsed with a ghostly rhythm. The soft, almost imperceptible churning of mechanisms was like the beat of a forgotten heart, a heartbeat that had witnessed the rise and fall of countless lives. In this chamber of mechanical sorcery, Jonathan discovered a series of inscriptions etched into the very metal of the engine. Each inscription recounted a fragment of the train's tragic history, the names of the brave souls who had once believed in its promise, the date of a fateful accident that had transformed hope into despair, and cryptic prophecies that foretold an endless journey between realms. The words, worn smooth by the passage of time, resonated with a power that transcended the mortal coil. They were not mere carvings, but the imprints of destiny itself, a record of vows made and hopes shattered. A sudden clamor in the background startled Jonathan, a dissonant mix of cries and murmurs that seemed to arise from the very bowels of the train. The sound sent a ripple of unease through the hall, as if the ancient engine were stirring from a long slumber. In that moment, the spectral figures of the passengers coalesced into a more defined presence, their ghostly forms congregating near the doorway as if drawn by an unseen summons. Their eyes glowing faintly with a light that was neither warm nor welcoming, fixated on the chamber with an intensity that bordered on desperation. Among these apparitions, one figure emerged with a clarity that defied the spectral haze, a young man with eyes that bore the weight of infinite sorrow. His presence was both tragic and striking, a reminder that the train's curse spared none, regardless of age or circumstance. He moved toward Jonathan with deliberate, measured steps, his gaze both pleading and resigned. In the silence that followed, an unspoken communion passed between them, a recognition of shared anguish and a mutual understanding that some truths were too painful to forget. The young man's voice, when it finally emerged, was soft and tremulous, as though laden with the burden of 1,000 regrets. "I once believed that the promise of this train was salvation," he whispered, his words barely audible above the mechanical murmur of the engine. "But the journey has stripped away all illusions, leaving only the raw, unyielding pain of loss." His eyes, shimmering with unshed tears, reflected memories of a life cut tragically short, of dreams deferred, and of love lost in the relentless passage of time. Jonathan, his own heart heavy with unspoken memories, reached out to the apparition as if to offer solace. But the young man faded like a wisp of smoke, leaving only the lingering echo of his sorrow. In that ephemeral moment, Jonathan understood that the cursed route was not simply a path through haunted landscapes. It was a crucible where the most profound aspects of the human soul were laid bare. Every regret, every unfulfilled desire, and every lost hope had been absorbed into the very essence of the train, creating a tapestry of despair that defied escape. The engine room's quiet was soon interrupted by the conductor's steady approach. With a gesture as deliberate as the ticking of an ancient clock, he indicated that it was time to depart from the chamber. "The truth, once glimpsed, cannot be unseen," the conductor seemed to say with his silent demeanor. "You have borne witness to the agony of those who rode before you. Now the journey demands that you embrace what lies ahead." His eyes, dark and fathomless, were both a challenge and a comfort, a silent assurance that every revelation, no matter how painful, was a step toward understanding the curse that bound them all. With reluctant determination, Jonathan retraced his steps from the engine room and rejoined the main carriage. Outside, the spectral passengers had grown quieter, as if the weight of their memories had deepened their silence. Yet within that stillness lay an undercurrent of anticipation, a sense that the train was drawing nearer to a threshold beyond which redemption and damnation intertwined. The landscape outside the windows had transformed yet again, evolving into a surreal panorama where dilapidated mansions, ancient graveyards, and twisted, gnarled trees formed a tableau of eternal mourning. In that haunting vista, the train appeared to slow its relentless pace, as if gathering the strength for the next phase of its enigmatic voyage. The interplay of light and shadow became increasingly dramatic, the passing scenery a chiaroscuro of hope and despair. Jonathan's thoughts raced as he contemplated the journey ahead. Every revelation, every ghostly encounter had left him with a singular, inescapable truth. The cursed route of the Silent Carriage was a mirror to the soul, a relentless exploration of what it meant to love, to lose, and to ultimately surrender. Inexorable pull of fate. As the train wound its way through this desolate landscape, a palpable tension filled the carriage, a charged atmosphere pregnant with the promise of further mysteries. The air seemed to vibrate with the remnants of forgotten voices, and every creak of the aged wood was a reminder of the countless lives etched into the fabric of this cursed journey. Jonathan, clutching his notebook tightly as though it were the only tangible link to his own existence, resolved to press onward. He knew that to truly understand the curse, he must venture deeper into the heart of this spectral nightmare, regardless of the toll it might exact on his soul. In a final act of defiant determination, he cast one last, lingering glance at the mirror in the secluded compartment, at the faces of those whose memories had converged with his own. In that reflective surface, he saw not only the weight of the past, but also a glimmer of possibility, a fragile hope that perhaps, by unearthing the train's darkest secrets, he might offer a measure of solace to the lost souls it carried. Yet, even as this thought flickered in his mind, the echo of the conductor's silent warning reminded him that every step toward the truth was also a step toward inevitable sorrow. With the train now barreling into an even deeper darkness, Jonathan Blackwood braced himself for the revelations that awaited. The journey into the abyss had only just begun, and with every heartbeat, he felt the inescapable pull of destiny, drawing him ever closer to the final, harrowing truths of the Silent Carriage. In that relentless twilight between memory and oblivion, his fate was sealed, a testament to the enduring power of loss, love, and the inexorable passage of time. The train's relentless journey continued through a realm that defied mortal explanation. As the spectral carriage surged onward into an expanse of overwhelming darkness, Jonathan Blackwood's pulse quickened, not merely with fear, but with the burning need to unravel the mysteries that had ensnared him since he first crossed its threshold. The oppressive silence that had so far held sway was now pierced by a subtle tension, a murmur of forces unseen that gathered in anticipation of what was to come. In the waning glow of the carriage's feeble lamps, the faces of the ghostly passengers assumed new dimensions. Their sorrowful eyes now bore the weight of imminent reckoning, and their silent vigil appeared almost purposeful, as if they were waiting for a moment of release or judgment. Jonathan sensed that the train was not merely a vessel of lost souls, but an arena where ancient vendettas and unfulfilled promises waged a war against the inexorable march of time. Drawn by an irresistible compulsion, Jonathan retraced his steps back toward the narrow passageway that led from the engine's compartment. The corridor, its walls marked with cryptic carvings and mottled by centuries of neglect, now throbbed with an eerie, almost palpable energy. Every step echoed in a manner that was both a call and a challenge, a summoning to face the truth that lay hidden in the darkest recesses of this cursed domain. Ahead, the passage split into two diverging paths. One route was lit dimly by a cascade of flickering lights that resembled tormented fireflies, while the other was shrouded in an impenetrable gloom. The conductor, whose silent guidance had led Jonathan this far, stood at the intersection with his head bowed as if in meditation. His presence was both reassuring and forbidding, a living emblem of the unyielding balance between fate and free will. Slowly, with a nod that seemed to carry the weight of destiny, the conductor pointed toward the path immersed in darkness. With trepidation tightening its grip, Jonathan stepped onto the shadowed route. The air grew colder still, and the sound of his own heartbeat became the sole metronome in the oppressive quiet. As he advanced, spectral figures began to emerge from the darkness, a silent procession of those who had long since succumbed to the train's curse. They moved with measured grace, their forms shifting and wavering as though in constant negotiation with the boundaries of existence. Their eyes, aglow with an otherworldly luminescence, conveyed both warning and hope in a language beyond words. The corridor twisted into a vast, cavernous chamber whose ceiling was lost in darkness. Here, the very walls were alive with shifting shadows that danced to an unseen melody. In the center of the chamber, an ancient stone altar had been erected, its surface scarred by time and ritual. Encircling the altar, ghostly figures gathered in a silent congregation, their expressions a blend of grief, determination, and defiance. It was here that Jonathan came face to face with the heart of the curse, a nexus where the past and present converged, and where the boundaries between life and death had all but dissolved. A sudden, almost imperceptible hum began to fill the chamber, building slowly into a resonant thrum that vibrated through Jonathan's bones. The altar, adorned with enigmatic symbols and faintly glowing inscriptions, pulsed in rhythm with this spectral sound, a heartbeat that had been lost to the ages. In that moment, the weight of innumerable memories pressed down upon him. Faces he had seen in fleeting glimpses on the train, voices that whispered fragments of long-forgotten stories, and the silent anguish of countless souls, all converged at this singular point in time. From the shadows emerged a figure that commanded both dread and awe. Unlike the conductor, whose presence had been constant and cryptic, this apparition radiated an intensity that bordered on the divine. Clad in tattered robes that merged with the surrounding darkness, the figure moved with a fluid grace, as if it were not bound by the physical laws that govern the living world. Its eyes, luminous and all-knowing, fixed upon Jonathan with an intensity that seemed to pierce through to the very core of his being. "Welcome, seeker of truth," the apparition intoned, its voice resonating in a manner that was both echoing and intimate. "You have journeyed far, drawn by the weight of your own regrets and the unyielding call of fate." The words, though soft, vibrated with an ancient authority that left no room for doubt. In that instant, Jonathan understood that he was standing before the embodiment of the train's eternal sorrow, a spectral custodian charged with preserving the stories of those lost in its relentless passage. The figure's gaze shifted slowly to encompass the assembled spirits. Each soul aboard this cursed carriage bears the imprint of a promise broken and a destiny denied, it continued, as though reciting a litany of woes from a time beyond reckoning. Their voices, once drowned in the cacophony of life, now rise as echoes in the void. And yet, within this despair, there flickers the faintest glimmer of hope, a hope that can only be awakened by one who dares to confront the darkness. Jonathan's heart pounded as he absorbed these words. He felt as if he were standing at the precipice of a chasm, one that separated the known from the unknown, the past from a possibility of redemption. The apparition extended a spectral hand toward him, its gesture both an invitation and a command. "To break this curse, you must face the truth of your own soul," it declared, its tone both compassionate and unyielding. "Only by embracing the darkness within can you ignite the light that will set these wandering spirits free." In that moment, the chamber seemed to shimmer with an unearthly brilliance. The carved inscriptions on the altar glowed with renewed intensity, revealing details that had been hidden in the shadows for untold years. Names, dates, and cryptic phrases coalesced into a tapestry of human triumphs and tragedies, a ledger of life's fleeting moments, recorded in the silent language of despair and hope. Jonathan's mind raced as he recognized fragments of his own life interwoven with the fates of those who had perished on this cursed route. He recalled moments of pain and loss, decisions made in desperation, and dreams that had been crushed under the relentless weight of circumstance. A profound realization washed over him. The curse of the Silent Carriage was not a punishment imposed by an external force, but the inexorable culmination of every sorrow, every regret that had ever taken root in the human heart. The spectral figures around him were not merely victims of fate, they were the living manifestations of unresolved emotions, a chorus of voices yearning for closure and absolution. And now, standing before the enigmatic custodian of these lost souls, Jonathan found himself called to play a role he had never imagined. As the apparition's words echoed in the cavernous hall, the surrounding spirits began to stir more purposefully. Some approached the altar, their expressions transforming from passive resignation to a determined resolve. Others, drawn by the hope that now mingled with despair, lifted their eyes to Jonathan as if seeking guidance. The atmosphere was charged with an energy that defied the oppressive gloom, a palpable anticipation of change. It was as if the very fabric of the curse was beginning to unravel, thread by thread, in response to the awakening of a single soul's inner light. "Your path is fraught with peril, Jonathan," the custodian intoned, its voice a solemn reminder of the stakes at hand. "To liberate these souls, you must first reconcile the darkness within you. Confront the regrets that have haunted you, and let the truth of your own journey merge with that of the forgotten. Only then will the curse be lifted and the silent whispers transformed into a song of redemption." A tumult of emotions surged within Jonathan: fear, determination, sorrow, and a glimmer of hope that defied the bleakness of his surroundings. He took a deep, steadying breath, and for the first time in what felt like an eternity, he allowed himself to truly face the abyss within. Memories long suppressed bubbled to the surface, moments of personal failure, lost loves, and decisions that had led him down paths of irrevocable sorrow. Each recollection was a shard of a broken mirror, reflecting fragments of a life marred by regret. Yet, as he embraced these painful truths, a remarkable transformation began to take shape. In the quiet moments that followed, as the ethereal custodian watched with a gaze that transcended time, Jonathan felt a surge of clarity. The crushing weight of his past, once a chain that bound him to despair, now became the very catalyst for change. He realized that every misstep, every tear shed in solitude, had been a necessary part of a journey that led him to this critical juncture. The spectral voices of the lost were not there to condemn him, but to remind him that even in the deepest darkness, the possibility of light endures. Summoning every ounce of courage, Jonathan stepped forward and placed his hand upon the cold stone of the altar. In that instant, a cascade of visions flooded his mind, images of lives intertwined with his own, of whispered promises, and of final farewells that had echoed through the corridors of time. The altar's inscriptions blazed with a fierce, almost divine light, and the surrounding spirits seemed to pause in their silent vigil, united in anticipation of the unfolding miracle. The apparition's eyes softened as it regarded Jonathan, as if acknowledging the transformation that was taking place. "The path to redemption is never without sacrifice," it murmured, its tone both tender and resolute. "By confronting your inner shadows, you have kindled a flame that can illuminate even the darkest corners of this cursed journey." The custodian's words resonated deep within Jonathan, filling him with a quiet determination to see this arduous journey through to its end. For a long, suspended moment, the only sound in the chamber was the rhythmic beat of Jonathan's heart, steady, insistent, and alive with the promise of change. Then, almost imperceptibly at first, a gentle radiance began to emanate from the altar, spreading outward to caress the faces of the gathered souls. One by one, the spectral figures lifted their eyes, and the cold pallor that had long defined their existence was replaced by a soft, healing luminescence. The oppressive curse that had held them captive for so long started to dissolve like mist under the morning sun. In that profound exchange of light and shadow, Jonathan felt the boundaries between his own soul and those of the departed blur. The chorus of silent voices merged into a single, harmonious murmur, a song of sorrow transformed into a hymn of hope and absolution. The energy in the chamber grew almost tangible, a fusion of human resilience and the ancient power of redemption that seemed to breathe new life into the cursed carriage. Yet, even as the darkness receded, the custodian's final words served as a solemn reminder that the journey was far from over. "Remember," it intoned, its voice now a soft echo, "that every moment of light is born from the embrace of darkness. The curse you have begun to unravel is but one chapter in a larger story, a story of endless cycles where hope and despair dance in perpetual embrace." With that, the apparition slowly faded into the encroaching shadows, leaving Jonathan standing before the altar, bathed in a glow that was both ethereal and transformative. The spectral passengers, now freed from the paralyzing grip of eternal sorrow, began to dissolve into the surrounding mist, each a gentle whisper of gratitude and farewell, carried off into the boundless night. Their departure was not an end, but a poignant promise that their memories would live on in the light Jonathan had kindled. As the train resumed its spectral voyage, a sense of renewal pervaded the carriage. The oppressive silence was replaced by a serene calm, a momentary reprieve from the relentless march of fate. Jonathan, though still marked by the scars of his past, now carried within him a fragile hope. The confrontation with his inner darkness had unveiled a path toward redemption, not only for himself, but for every lost soul that had ever boarded the Silent Carriage. In that delicate balance between light and shadow, between despair and hope, Jonathan Blackwood embraced the final transformative truth that every journey, no matter how cursed or forlorn, holds the promise of rebirth when one dares to confront the darkness within and let light of truth prevail. As the spectral train surged onward into realms where twilight and dawn intermingled in a paradox of fading shadows and emerging light, Jonathan Blackwood sensed that the journey was nearing its most profound climax. The gentle radiance that had briefly freed the lost souls in the chamber now ebbed, leaving behind an ethereal afterglow that clung to every surface of the carriage. This final crossing was not merely a passage through haunted landscapes. It was a voyage into the very essence of redemption and reckoning. In the hushed stillness that followed the miraculous dissolution of despair, the train's interior transformed subtly. The heavy silence that once pressed in like a tomb was now interspersed with a delicate, almost imperceptible hum of renewal. Jonathan's breath, steadying after the overwhelming confrontation with his own inner darkness, merged with the rhythmic clatter of the ancient wheels. Outside, the scenery shifted from bleak ruins to a horizon tinged with the gentle blush of impending dawn, a symbolic promise that even the deepest night yields to the light of a new day. Jonathan's eyes, still moist with the residue of cathartic sorrow, roamed the carriage. The ghostly figures of the departed had become less defined, their once anguished visages now softening into expressions of peaceful resignation. In this quiet metamorphosis, each spirit seemed to offer a silent benediction to the seeker who had dared to unveil the curse's hidden heart. The air vibrated with a subtle energy, one that resonated with the shared hope and collective healing of countless souls bound by regret and loss. Drawn by an internal compulsion that was equal parts destiny and desire for absolution, Jonathan moved toward the foremost window of the carriage. As he pressed his hand against the cold glass, he beheld a vista that defied the somber landscape of earlier nights. The world beyond was a shifting tapestry of past and present, ancient, crumbling edifices, now intermingled with gentle, tender blooms of wildflowers emerging from the barren earth. It was as if nature herself was reclaiming the scars of time, offering a quiet testament to life's enduring capacity for renewal. A familiar, solemn presence soon appeared at his side. The conductor, clad in his eternal black uniform and still emanating an air of cryptic authority, stood silently. His eyes, once mirrors of inexorable fate, now bore a hint of something like compassion. With a slow, measured gesture, he motioned toward a narrow corridor at the rear of the carriage. This way, his unspoken command seemed to echo, inviting Jonathan to cross the threshold into what lay beyond the physical confines of the train. Venturing into the corridor, Jonathan found himself in a space that defied the ordinary. Here, the walls were lined with an ever-changing mural, a living chronicle of the train's history and the myriad lives it had touched. Scenes played out in spectral relief, tender reunions between lovers separated by time, heartfelt farewells between parents and children, and quiet moments of introspection as souls confronted the weight of their past. Each vignette was imbued with a bittersweet luminescence that spoke of loss, yet also of the possibility of forgiveness and transcendence. At the corridor's end, a heavy door of ancient oak stood slightly ajar, its surface etched with symbols that pulsed softly as if animated by a hidden inner light. With hesitant resolve, Jonathan pushed it open and stepped into a vast antechamber that seemed to exist between worlds. In this liminal space, time was fluid, each moment stretching and contracting like the steady breathing of the universe. The chamber was illuminated by a single shaft of light piercing through a crack in the ceiling, creating a golden pathway across a floor strewn with scattered mementos, faded photographs, handwritten letters, and small trinkets that carried the weight of long-forgotten memories. At the center of the antechamber stood a pedestal on which rested an ancient leather-bound journal. Its cover, embossed with intricate designs, appeared to be a repository of every whispered secret and every unfulfilled promise recorded along the cursed route. Jonathan approached the pedestal with a mix of reverence and trepidation, feeling that this journal might hold the key to understanding not only the origin of the curse, but also the nature of the redemption that now beckoned. Gingerly, he opened the journal, and as the brittle pages turned, he found them inscribed with the collective voices of those who had once ridden the Silent Carriage. Every entry was a tapestry of emotion, joy interwoven with sorrow, hope tempered by regret. In one passage, a long-forgotten traveler described the train as a bridge between hearts, a mirror that reflects our deepest sorrows and our brightest longings. In another, a weary soul recorded, "To be aboard is to be offered a chance at absolution, even as you are reminded of what has been lost." The words resonated deeply with Jonathan, affirming that the journey was not solely one of despair, but also one of profound human connection and the possibility of healing. As he read, the chamber itself seemed to respond. The shaft of light brightened, and the symbols on the door shimmered with renewed vitality. A soft breeze, though inexplicable in the sealed confines of the antechamber, whispered around him, carrying with it the scent of rain-soaked earth and wild blossoms. It was a sensory reminder that renewal was not an abstract ideal, but a tangible force, one that could revive even the most withered of spirits. In that moment, Jonathan experienced a profound epiphany. The curse of the Silent Carriage, with all its tragic weight and spectral horrors, was not an immutable sentence of despair. Instead, it was a mirror reflecting the unresolved conflicts and buried sorrows of all who had ever set foot aboard. The only way to break its hold was not to flee from the darkness, but to embrace it, to accept the full spectrum of one's own humanity, with all its flaws and splendors. Redemption, he realized, was born from the reconciliation of past wounds and the courageous act of facing one's inner demons head-on. Overwhelmed by this revelation, Jonathan closed the journal and felt an inexplicable calm descend upon him. In the soft glow of the antechamber, he sensed that the journey was now entering its final phase, a culmination of the intertwined fates of the living and the departed. The spectral voices that had once haunted the corridors now mingled with a gentle murmur of hope, as if acknowledging that the cycle of sorrow might finally give way to renewal. Rejoining the main carriage, Jonathan found the conductor waiting at the threshold with an expression that blended solemnity and quiet pride. Without uttering a word, the conductor extended his hand, a silent benediction, inviting Jonathan to step forward into the unknown. With steady resolve, Jonathan accepted the gesture, feeling the weight of his past lighten as he moved into the radiant embrace of the coming dawn. As the train began to decelerate, the landscape outside transformed into a serene panorama. The oppressive gloom was replaced by the soft light of early morning, and the spectral mists that had once obscured reality began to dissolve, revealing a world reborn. Abandoned towns and forgotten ruins gave way to gentle hills dotted with wildflowers, and the once desolate tracks now hinted at paths of promise. It was as though the very curse that had defined the train's tragic legacy was unraveling, replaced by the tender threads of hope and renewal. In the final moments of the journey, as the silent carriage neared its ultimate destination, a place that existed at the crossroads of memory and possibility, Jonathan's heart swelled with a profound mix of relief and bittersweet farewell. He understood that the souls he had encountered along this cursed route, each a repository of human joy and despair, were finally on the verge of finding the peace they had long been denied. And in that realization, he found a measure of solace for his own tormented past. The train came to a gentle halt on a platform bathed in the soft glow of the rising sun. The spectral passengers, now transformed into luminous echoes of their former selves, began to dissipate into the dawn, their expressions serene and their burdens lifted. The conductor, his eyes reflecting the quiet triumph of a long, arduous journey, offered Jonathan one final, knowing nod, a silent promise that the cycle of redemption was eternal. Stepping off the carriage, Jonathan Blackwood felt the cool morning air embrace him like a long-awaited friend. The world beyond the station was vibrant with possibility, a tapestry of life reawakened after a long night of sorrow. As he walked away from the platform, his steps felt lighter, as if each footfall carried him further from the weight of past regrets and closer to a future filled with uncharted hope. In the lingering silence that marked the end of the cursed route, the legacy of the silent carriage endured not as a tale of eternal despair, but as a testament to the transformative power of confronting one's innermost shadows. For in that final crossing, Jonathan discovered that the true journey was not one of escape, but of acceptance, a journey toward a horizon where even the darkest night gives way to the promise of a new dawn. The dawn's gentle light had not yet fully dispelled the lingering shadows as Jonathan Blackwood stepped away from the old station. Although his spectral journey aboard the silent carriage had reached a moment of cathartic redemption, the echoes of its sorrowful legacy murmured on in the recesses of his soul. As he walked along a deserted cobblestone road away from the station, an inexplicable tug drew him forward, a call not only from the voices of those set free, but also from those whose stories remain unfinished. The morning air, crisp and imbued with the scent of dew and ancient earth, carried soft whispers that brushed against his consciousness. Every so often, a fleeting chill ran down his spine, as if unseen eyes watched his every step. In the quiet solitude of a sleepy town, the vestiges of the curse persisted. Dilapidated structures and time-worn alleys bore silent testimony to histories steeped in both tragedy and resilience. In one narrow lane, Jonathan discovered a weathered stone plaque half hidden behind overgrown ivy, its surface inscribed with words that resonated deeply with the themes of loss and renewal he had experienced aboard the carriage. In the silence of forgotten souls, their stories await a voice to carry them into light. Compelled by an inner resolve to honor those unresolved voices, Jonathan reached into his battered notebook, the repository of his journey's revelations, and carefully transcribed the faded script. As his pen traced each letter, memories of spectral faces surged forth, mingling with visions of dreams deferred and hearts left in the twilight of despair. In that moment, he understood that his quest was far from over. The path to healing was a continuum, an endless pursuit of understanding the delicate interplay between sorrow and hope. The day unfolded slowly as Jonathan wandered through the town, his senses attuned to every nuance of the living tapestry around him. In a forgotten corner of the town square, he encountered an elderly man seated on a creaking bench. The man's eyes, distant yet filled with timeless wisdom, shone with the melancholy of bygone eras. Clutching a faded photograph of a smiling family, a relic of lost time, the old man murmured softly, "Not every soul finds its final rest. Some linger at the crossroads of memory and time, awaiting the light of remembrance." Those words struck a resonant chord within Jonathan, urging him to seek further clues to the incomplete legacy of the Silent Carriage. As twilight wove its purple hues across the sky, he found himself drawn to an abandoned mansion on the outskirts of town, a sprawling relic whose walls whispered tales of both grandeur and grief. Though time had left its mark on the mansion, its melancholic beauty persisted. The once vibrant gardens lay in disarray, overtaken by wild vines, while broken windows framed the soft murmur of the wind. Inside, Jonathan discovered a forgotten study, a sanctuary of memories preserved in dust-laden books, scattered letters, and relics silently bearing witness to lives once vibrant with hope. Among these treasures, a solitary envelope, its seal long broken and its contents yellowed by time, beckoned him with quiet urgency. Unfolding the fragile paper, he read a letter penned in elegant, looping script. The letter recounted the tale of a family torn apart by mystery, a story of unfulfilled promises, a lost heirloom imbued with ancestral blessings and sorrows, and a desperate longing for reunion. Like the cursed carriage, this narrative had been suspended in time, waiting for someone to mend the fractures of the past. That night, as the full moon ascended into the inky sky, Jonathan sat by a dusty window in the study, the letter spread before him like a map to hidden truths. In the reflective solitude, he realized that the legacy of the Silent Carriage extended far beyond its haunted journey. It was woven into the fabric of the world, etched into the memories of those it had touched. The spectral voices had encountered were not isolated echoes of a single tragedy. They were part of a larger, interconnected tapestry of human experience, a reminder that every heart, however burdened, yearns for a chance at healing and reunion. In that contemplative stillness, a gentle knock at the mansion's heavy wooden door shattered the silence. Startled, Jonathan rose and approached. When he opened the door, a young woman stood before him, her eyes luminous with both apprehension and profound sadness. Dressed in garments hinting at a bygone era, she introduced herself in a soft, hesitant tone as Eleanor, a descendant of the family chronicled in the letter. Her unexpected presence felt faded, as if their paths had been intertwined long before this very moment. Eleanor's story unfolded like a delicate dance between memory and mourning. She spoke of a family legacy marred by secrets, a legacy fractured by an unresolved tragedy. The lost heirloom, a cherished relic once believed to carry both blessings and burdens, had vanished without a trace, leaving behind a void that haunted generations. For years, Eleanor had sought answers, driven by dreams of reuniting the scattered fragments of her family's history. Yet, every lead had turned cold, every path led to dead ends, until now. In her eyes, Jonathan recognized the same flicker of determination that had compelled him to board the Silent Carriage, a resolute desire to confront the darkness of the past and kindle a light for those still lost in its depths. Together, Jonathan and Eleanor embarked on a quest that transcended the boundaries of time and space, a journey that would lead them into the hidden corners of forgotten histories and the lingering shadows of lost souls. Delving deeper into the mysteries of the mansion and the family legacy, they uncovered connections that spanned decades and intertwined with the fate of the cursed carriage. The letter was but the first piece of a grand puzzle, each clue a bridge between sorrow and hope, between the echoes of the past and the promise of a future yet to be written. In the days that followed, their partnership deepened into a bond forged in the crucible of shared loss and mutual aspiration. Eleanor's gentle resolve complemented Jonathan's relentless pursuit of truth, and together they unearthed stories of love and sacrifice, of hearts scarred yet resilient in the face of inexorable time. Their journey took them to forgotten archives, dusty libraries where ancient records whispered secrets, and remote locations where the legacy of the cursed carriage still lingered like a fragile, unspoken prayer. One crisp evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon and darkness claimed the sky, Jonathan and Eleanor found themselves standing before an old cemetery on the town's outskirts, a final resting place where generations had come seeking solace in the eternal embrace of memory. Among the weathered tombstones, one monument in particular caught their attention. Adorned with symbols echoing the mystique of the Silent Carriage, its inscription mournfully read as a dedication to the lost heirloom, a promise unfulfilled. The monument pulsed with an inner light, a silent beacon calling out to those who dared remember. In that sacred space, surrounded by the silent testimonies of lives past, Jonathan and Eleanor made a solemn vow to honor the legacy of every soul touched by the cursed route, to mend the fractures of a history steeped in sorrow, and to rekindle the dormant light of hope. They understood that their journey was not one of simple resolution, but a continuous quest, a never-ending dialogue between the living and the departed, a testament to the enduring power of remembrance and love. As the first faint glimmers of dawn crept over the horizon, Jonathan felt a quiet certainty settle within him. The echoes of the past, though haunting and persistent, no longer promised despair, but whispered of the possibility of healing and transformation. With Eleanor by his side, he stepped forward into a future where every sorrow might be met with compassion, where every lost soul could finally find its way home. The spectral mists of dawn had barely lifted when Jonathan Blackwood and Eleanor, now bound by a shared destiny and the scars of their haunted pasts, found themselves drawn toward a long-forgotten clearing at the edge of a silent forest. Here, nature and memory intertwined, a place where time seemed to pause, holding its breath for the final reckoning of the curse that had haunted the Silent Carriage for generations. In the clearing, a circle of ancient stones stood like sentinels, guarding a sacred ritual. At its center lay a weathered pedestal, upon which rested the long-lost heirloom, the relic whispered about in faded letters and murmured by the souls of the departed. Its surface was etched with symbols of hope and despair, a mirror reflecting the fractured stories of all who had suffered along the cursed route. For years, this heirloom had remained lost, a missing link in the chain of broken promises. Tonight, it shone with a mysterious inner light, as though calling out to be reclaimed. Jonathan's heart pounded with a mixture of trepidation and determination. Every step he had taken, from the ghostly station through the echoing corridors of the carriage to the abandoned mansion where lost memories were preserved, had led him to this singular moment. Standing beside him, Eleanor's eyes glistened with both resolve and sorrow. She had carried her family's legacy in her heart for so long, believing that only by reuniting the shattered pieces of the past could healing finally begin. Now, with the heirloom before them, their intertwined fates converged on the precipice of redemption. Together, they approached the pedestal. The cool night air was filled with the faint strains of a melancholy hymn, an echo of the countless voices that had once been silenced by the curse. In that moment, the boundaries between the living and the departed seemed to blur. The spectral figures they had encountered along the journey appeared as gentle apparitions at the edge of the clearing, their faces a silent chorus of hope and longing. Even the ever-present conductor, whose mysterious guidance had led Jonathan through the labyrinth of the cursed carriage, materialized in the periphery. His form, cloaked in the eternal black uniform, now carried a quiet gravity, as if he were witnessing the closing of an age-old chapter. Eleanor reached out, her hand trembling slightly, and retrieved the heirloom. It was a small, intricately designed medallion, its metal dulled by time, yet pulsing with an undeniable aura. The medallion bore an inscription in a script that seemed to shimmer in the moonlight, a promise of release and renewal. As her fingers closed around it, a subtle warmth spread through her hand, as though the relic itself were alive with the memories of all those who had once sought solace aboard the Silent Carriage. Jonathan stepped forward and laid his hand over hers, their connection sealing an unspoken vow. Together, they recited the incantation etched into the medallion's surface, a litany passed down through generations, woven into the fabric of the curse. Their voices, soft yet resolute, merged with the quiet rustling of leaves and the distant murmur of the awakening world. In that sacred circle, time itself seemed to bend, the weight of countless regrets, unfulfilled dreams, and unspoken farewells swirled around them like autumn leaves caught in a gentle wind. As the final syllable left their lips, a brilliant cascade of light burst forth from the heirloom. The radiance, warm and all-encompassing, spread outward in ripples that touched every corner of the clearing. One by one, the spectral figures began to dissolve into motes of luminous dust. The mournful whispers that had long haunted the Silent Carriage transformed into a soft, harmonious chorus, a song of forgiveness and release. It was as if the very essence of the curse was being unspooled, its dark threads unraveling beneath the power of shared compassion and truth. The ancient stones vibrated with a surge of transformative energy. The medallion's light reached upward, merging with the first golden rays of the rising sun. In that sublime moment, the spectral train that had once carried untold sorrow was no longer a vessel of eternal despair, but a relic of a past that was finally laid to rest. The curse, born of forgotten grief and unresolved regrets, was broken. The Silent Carriage, the very embodiment of lost time and wandering souls, faded from the horizon, its legacy transmuted into a memory of pain now overcome by the promise of new beginnings. Standing amidst the dissipating light, Jonathan and Eleanor felt a profound peace settle over them. The conductor, his eyes soft with the weight of ages, offered one final, wordless nod before he too began to fade into the ambient glow. His departure was not a loss, but a benediction, a silent assurance that his role as guardian of the cursed route had fulfilled its purpose. In that quiet farewell, the boundaries between the worlds of the living and the departed finally parted, leaving behind a tapestry of hope woven through the remnants of sorrow. In the aftermath of that transcendent awakening, the clearing transformed into a symbol of rebirth. The ancient stones, now bathed in gentle light, became markers of remembrance and renewal, a testament to the fact that even the darkest journeys can find their way to redemption. Jonathan looked to Eleanor, and in her steady gaze, he recognized not just a kindred spirit, but the embodiment of the promise that had driven them both, that every broken heart can mend, and every lost soul can find its way home. With the curse lifted, the journey that had begun on a forlorn, haunted track came to its final healing conclusion. The medallion, now softly pulsating with a serene glow, was carefully placed back upon the pedestal, as if to sanctify the ground where once the curse had reigned. It was a silent promise that the lessons of the past, of love, loss, and ultimately hope, would forever guide those who dared to seek truth in the midst of despair. In the gentle light of the new dawn, Jonathan and Eleanor turned away from the clearing. Their path now lay open before them, a road lined with the soft echoes of past sorrows and the vibrant promise of a future reawakened. They knew that the memories of the Silent Carriage would live on in every whispered legend and in the hearts of those touched by its legacy, but they also knew that they had played their part in ending its long night. As they walked away, the soft rustling of leaves and the distant song of morning birds accompanied their steps, a symphony of nature welcoming a new day. The curse that had once bound a multitude of souls had been shattered by the courage to face one's own darkness and the compassion to heal the wounds of time. In that final, serene moment, the haunted journey of the Silent Carriage was at an end, a story of loss transformed into a timeless ode to redemption. And so, with hearts unburdened and eyes set toward the horizon, Jonathan Blackwood and Eleanor embarked on a new chapter of life, one where every step was a testament to the power of remembrance, the healing force of love, and the eternal promise that even the most cursed routes can lead to the light.